Welcome back. I'm your host, Renata, a creativity coach for neurodivergent and multi-passionate women of color. And in this show, we talk about all things creativity as it relates to our self-discovery and healing journey. In today's show, we are going to be talking about some of the ways that we may be putting pressure on ourselves without even realizing it, and how this may be impacting your well being and your ability to experience more ease and calm. So let's talk about it. I want to share with you tips to help you to start to release some of this pressure and start to put yourself first. If this sounds interesting to you, then keep listening, keep watching if you're on YouTube, and let's get into it. First, let's talk about the problem with being gifted and having potential. As neurodivergent, sensitive, intuitive, creative kids, we tend to show our gifts really early on, and we don't even know that we're doing it. We think this is normal life. We think everybody must be going through this because this is what we're experiencing. But the reality is that this is not the case. I grew up with siblings who needed a lot of support, who needed a lot of help, a sister who used to get sick a lot, a brother who used to get into trouble. So my parents spent a lot of time managing whatever was going on with them. I was the middle child and I was sort of left to fend for myself. And part of it had to do with the fact that because I was so empathic, because I noticed what was happening around me, and I saw the way that my parents struggled, the way that they had so much on their plate, I wanted to help. I wanted to make it easy on them. So I would hold back from asking for my needs. I would hold back from asking for help. And I will try to mind my business basically. And I think another thing that happened was that this showed up in me wanting to do really well in school. Because I was neglected, invisible, and nobody really paid attention to me, I try to seek out attention, validation, love through performance, through doing good in school, because that's what you do when you're a kid, and that's all you really do most of your day, right? You go to school and you try to stay out of trouble. I would try to pass my classes, never get in trouble, never really do anything bad. I would just try to follow the rules. And I thought in my mind, this is how my parents will see me. This is how I'm going to be noticed. And this also carried on to teachers and just people, right? Like wanting to be seen by anybody. But the problem with this is that subconsciously, this teaches us that we always have to be doing something. We always have to be improving. We always have to be helping, that we can't just be ourselves without having to do anything to prove our worth. Another thing that happens when we put so much pressure on ourselves is that we tend to internalize past mistakes and we get very rigid. And what I mean is that if you've ever done anything where you made a mistake, you probably felt it so intensely that you blamed yourself. For example, one of the things that always comes to mind for when I think about this sort of thing is the first time that I tried to build a website by myself. I was working at this restaurant and my manager wanted to kind of redo the website. And at that time, I was going to school and I was taking this web design class, and I told him about it. And so he was like, "Oh, maybe you could do our website." Mind you, I had no experience. I was just getting my feet wet when it came to web design, but I was willing to take a shot at it. And I wanted to make my boss happy, and I wanted to prove myself. I wanted to show that I was a serious designer, that I could do this. And so I did it. I went for it. He gave me the information to access his accounts and whatnot. And the worst happened. My worst scenario came true. I started messing with the code and whatever. And next thing you know, the website went down. For some reason, I broke it and I felt horrible. I basically broke the website down. I let my boss down and I let myself down because I didn't do this thing that I thought I could do. I think that all of us probably have a story like that where we did something and it didn't go the way that we planned, and we thought to ourselves like, I'm the worst person ever, I'm never going to take any more risks. and I am just going to stay safe. But the truth is that we can't live like that because life is always throwing obstacles at us. There's always something that we have to work through, and it's going to force us to have to get out of our comfort zone. So having that mentality is only going to limit us. And what we don't realize is that it's okay to make mistakes. And this happens when you're trying to learn something. This is part of the process of learning. But I think that the other thing that we notice as sensitive and intuitive people is that we see the reactions that people have to us. We see the way that we disappoint them. We see the way that they feel angry or upset. And we never want to put people in that situation because of something we did. So, what this does is that it puts a lot of pressure on us to always perform perfectly, to never be able to make any mistakes because someone is going to be angry about it. And that's just unrealistic. And I think we also live in a culture where people want to appear like they have it all together and like they never have any doubts, any questions, because the person that is the smartest, that always have something witty to say, is seen as the cool person, the person that everybody looks up to and everybody wants to be like. But this holds us back in so many ways because, again, the way that we grow, the way that we learn as human beings is to constantly be trying things, to be making mistakes, quote unquote, and to learn from that. But the way that I see it and that I encourage you to see it is that this is a very normal part of growing, of developing. You have to experiment with things to see what works. And there's nothing wrong with making mistakes. But I think that it's really important that we find a space where the stakes are not so high and we can play and have fun and experiment. Another reason that we may be putting a lot of pressure on ourselves is because we're trying to make ourselves so small to avoid inconveniencing others. And this is too high of a price to pay in order to accommodate to other people's needs. This tends to show up because we fear having to ask for help, or even worse, getting rejected if we do ask for that help. There's nothing worse than putting yourself out there, being vulnerable, and sharing how you really feel, only for people to use that against you. This is why I think a lot of us don't really say what we really want to say. We hold back and we are generally afraid of how people will respond to us. So we're constantly monitoring how they are going to react. A really innocent example of how this has showed up in my life has been something as simple as going to a restaurant, picking a drink, and maybe realizing that that's not what I wanted to have, and being too afraid to say, hey, can you bring me something else? Because I realize this isn't what I want. Oh my God, the number of times this has happened to me where I didn't really know how to ask for what I wanted because I have been in such a habit of just going along things, just forcing myself to push through whatever was going on and never ever asking for what I really needed. And then wondering why I felt so angry and bitter because I never get what I want. And I'm sure that you have your own version of something like this, many versions of it. And if that's the case, I want to let you know that your feelings are valid, your experiences are valid. This is okay. Now, I want to give you 5 tips to help you to start to relax and start to release some of that pressure and start to find your center. Tip number one is to lower your expectations. If you start to notice that you aspire to do a lot, you want to do the most, take it down a notch. What would that look like for you? You don't always have to do the most. And this is a simple one that we can start to do when we get mindful and we pause for a moment and ask ourselves, what's realistic for me to do without having to overextend myself? Tip number two is to do less. This is one of the things that I'm most passionate about, and I want to really bring home through this show, through my work, is that it's okay to do less. It's okay for you to start to really pick your battles, be selective about the things that you want to be spending your time on, and be unapologetic about it. It's okay to have those boundaries. And I really want to encourage you to to get mindful and start to let go of things that you don't have to do, that is not your responsibility, because likely you are doing a lot of things that are not really for you to do. So assess what's going on in your life and see what it is that you can let go of. Tip number 3 is to aim for good enough. This one goes out to all the recovering perfectionists and the overachievers. It's okay to do good enough work. I have talked to so many women like me who struggle to do less than perfect work. I want to let you know that you don't have to do the most elaborate, life changing, profound work for it to be valuable and meaningful. You being here, you giving your best is good enough. Tip number 4 is to focus on activities that energize you. This is your sign to let go of doing things that drain you, things that you don't look forward to, because the more that you do this, the less energy you have for the things that actually matter. And remember, art is one of those things, creativity is one of those things that we want to put our time into, because not only can they support you in your life, but they can also serve as a great way to unwind, to relax, to get back in touch with our sense of play, which we need so that we can keep going and keep moving forward in our lives. Tip number 5 is to challenge your own internalized sense of urgency. We live in a capitalistic society that is constantly asking us to do more, to produce more. So it's really common to internalize this mentality, this way of doing things without questioning it. So next time that you're feeling like you have to do things really fast, like you have to produce things yesterday, ask yourself, can I do it slower? Can I take up more space? Can I ask for accommodations or extensions? Because more often than not, we may not be taking advantage of those opportunities. If you take anything from this episode, I hope that you take this. You are allowed to set boundaries on your time, your energy, and your mental capacity. You can change your mind if you realize that something doesn't work for you. You are less worthy of a person if you decide to take on less responsibilities or ask for accommodations. You are good enough as you are. Give yourself permission to slow down and put yourself first. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and hit like if you're watching on YouTube. Also, sign up for my newsletter. This is the best way for us to stay connected and be the first to hear about my latest offerings. And if you want to explore slowing down, letting go of control and perfectionism at a deeper level, I want to invite you to check out my brand new coaching program called Rediscovering Play through Expressive Art Making. This is a 6-week journey to help you quiet your busy mind, reconnect with your intuition, and tap into the wisdom of your inner child through expressive art making. You don't need any previous art experience, just a willingness to play and explore. To learn more, check out the link in the show's description. Thank you for tuning in, and I will talk to you on the next one. Until then, stay creative. Bye.